Let me share here. All right, super cool. Thanks everyone for joining. I know it's been a few weeks since we did SaaStr. So thanks for joining it. Let me promote David here. Come in, I think, David. There he is.
Sorry, connection problem.
I was like,
Hi. Yes.
hi,
Um,
how's it going?
yeah, good, good. Let's do this.
Let's do this. It's been a couple weeks since SaaStr.
Just starting to recover.
I know. I was like,
Yeah,
it's been both a long time and yet not a lot of time.
yeah.
Both can be true. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining, or if you're watching the replay, or maybe you're just gonna read the quick AI notes from this, that's fine too. So thanks for joining. We do these every year post events. If you were a new sponsor this year, we do these every year after the SaaStr annual. We put together all the data and we do what we call a post-event executive debrief. So you can see maybe if you've had a call with David or myself lately, you can also just see by like where you kind of netted out by comparison of, we go through a lot of the data of averages of what was like average numbers of leads, how did people activate, all that jazz. So again, you can see kind of how you stack up in that sort of ranking. If at any point you want to dive into more specifics of like your specific sponsorship and what this all data means for you, just let us know. We'll do a separate call with you to dive into it a bit more because we're going to keep this one fairly high level and we're going to try and not do it in a whole hour. So, first and foremost, I think the thing you guys might have noticed the most just from a SaaStr perspective. So last year we did SaaStr annual and a like SaaStr AI summit within the SaaStr annual. We also did the summits for things like CMO, CFO, CCO, CRO within SaaStr annual. And this year it's all combined, right? So we just combined everything into the umbrella of SaaStr AI. And this is the annual and AI summit for what just happened in May. We are going to do a smaller version in London in December, which we'll get to at the end of this. But that's exciting news bears there. If you guys have clients that you're serving in Europe, basically carrying across this new format that we have, which will be new probably for 2 weeks. We'll redo it again. The rate of change is just so fast. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing you might have noticed from our standpoint. You'll also see different in these numbers if you went to this last year or if you you sort of remember going to this last time. We did put a lot more AI stats into this just so you can see how that impacted the attendees and the makeup and the demographics of folks who come to SaaStr. It definitely is prevalent in the data. So just interesting to see there as well. So let's get into kind of just a high level recap. David, let me know your thoughts on any of this that you want to jump in on. We'll do this specifically with the lens for sponsors, but we will talk about attendees since they're who you guys met with. So this was actually the 11th SaaStr annual. Again, we call it SaaStr AI annual AI Summit. It was the 11th edition of a SaaStr annual here in the States. So we've done a bunch of these now. Next year will be 12. So that is a little bit crazy. We hosted 10K attendees across 3 days. I will say in the data, it's not like called out here, but just something we've seen. We see this every year. We've seen this more so like in the last 2 or 3 years. Not everybody comes every day. So something to keep in mind there. I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to the summits. A lot of those folks come for their summits in particular. And they come the day of, they walk the floor, they go to the summit, and then they bounce. So just things to keep in mind there. You'll see some volume of traffic there. That's not there all 3 days, but a lot of folks do come at least the 1.5 days. They do like the first and second day or second and third day. Lots of attendee connections. So this almost 40K connections is counting a lot of things. So that's everything from like how many unique lead scans there were, how many connections were made via brain dates, how many connections were made via who do you want to meet, all the summit connections that were made. So yeah, a fair amount of different like one-to-one connections that just add up and all the connections that were made across 3 days. Lots of hours of workshops and meetings hosted. I know sometimes our sponsors don't get to actually consume that much of the content at SaaStr. We are putting out a lot of, well, one, all of it's live. So if you hosted a sponsor workshop session on the SaaStr stage, it is instantly live. We live stream everything. So it's on the SaaStr YouTube channel already. You can find it by going to the day of stream. Also, if you want a direct link, I know that's something David and I have been sending out to folks. But yeah, there is a lot of workshops and content we are posting out on like the SaaStr podcast, SaaStr.com. A lot of it's highly recommend consuming as much of it as you can. Again, super tactical, a lot of it focused on AI. You'll see that in the data here. Typically we say, you know, most of our speakers are C-suite level. This was a year in which we had all speakers that were C-suite level. Again, I think that's just the focus of how folks want to consume and interact with SaaStr as a community, right? We saw a lot of feedback in attendee surveys of folks like it coming from the C-suite directly, and also it just being super tactical. I think the days of, you know, sharing more of like case studies and like founder stories are not as interesting anymore as they used to be. Nowadays, folks just want to know what's working, what are you doing with AI? And you'll see that here. So 47% of our content in the end was AI focused. I went into it knowing it'd probably be around 50-50. So it was close to 50-50 split there of AI versus go-to-market content focus. Again, that's just something to keep in mind if, as a sponsor, I know some of you were on the fence too of like, hey, do we focus our content? If we have content, do we focus it on AI? Do we focus it on go-to-market? Obviously, if you combine those, it's kind of a happy path. Not everyone can. But yeah, honestly, this is what we're seeing now. Like, again, those case studies and like founder stories that used to be a lot of what made up the content at SaaStr is now just into these hyper-focused tactical areas. So yeah, you'll see that even more so, I think, across SaaStr.com, and maybe even more so from your constituents of customers. If maybe that helps you plan your own things of content what you're going towards. But this is just what we've seen at like a much bigger scale of content. We put out a lot of content for those who don't know, not just around the annual. We do like 3 posts a day on SaaStr.com, weekly podcasts, every other day newsletter. So lots of content at scale.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in. Oh, sorry. Just one thing. Just some of the top sessions are also being broadcast on the podcast. We just the HubSpot session is beginning great reviews and was just on the podcast this week. And so stay tuned for a lot of that too.
Yeah, that one's I do recommend. That one's a little bit longer, and we did chop it up a little bit, but it's such a good one that Jason Yamini did. I think I'm actually using some of the tidbits she said in it now in calls with folks. Because like, if you don't listen to the whole thing, like there's so many good takeaways in that about sales, and also just like the rate of change and speed of which everything is at. Like even she is feeling it. And even, you know, Yamini said herself on the podcast, like she's like, I don't feel like HubSpot is moving fast enough. I'm like, I feel like none of us are moving fast enough anymore, but we're trying, right? So yeah, anyways, we could do a whole session on that. So yeah, anyways, a lot of content on AI, that's to be expected, but it's also what people want, right? I think a lot of our attendee data shows that's what folks want now. We had 90 sponsors, so that's an increase from last year's sponsor numbers. A lot of really great sponsors. As you guys know, we ended up utilizing both hangars, as we call them, in the expo halls. Attendees from over 50 different countries, again, to be expected. Our split is about 70-30, so 73-27 on US versus international. That actually held the same since last year, just if you're curious. That's what we saw last year as well. Interesting, this year kind of held the same rates. We used to skew more like 60-40 split. I think just post-COVID, we've kind of been at the 70-30 split now consistently for the last 2 or 3 years for annual in particular. So again, it's most of the folks you're going to be talking to US folks. It's just a reminder for most of our sponsors, we tell them, if you do serve, you know, other countries, if you can bring one person to, you know, serve that 30% of people who are going to be in those international markets. Platinum / Platinum Plus and Diamond level saw the biggest boost this year in amount of volume of leads, up more than 50% from 2024. Lots of reasons for that, which we'll dive into a few of them just at a high level. But I think for us, that's important that we do give our higher tier sponsors almost like bespoke and custom level of packaging and activation, and it goes to show that it's reflected in the lead volume as well. You'll see the numbers across all levels in a second, but I think that's just a standout there to see that the higher tiers performed really exceptional this year, given the layout of the floor has a lot to do with it there. And it did, again, just as you activate and maybe start to plant the seed of thinking about 2026, we've seen this now consistently for 2 years that about 40% of our attendees attend SaaStr Annual as a team. So for us, that means 3 or more attendees from the same company. That's what we define as a team coming to SaaStr, at least one of those folks being an exec, just in the way that we have everything being at the executive level. So again, just different ways to think about activating on site, and maybe some reflections there of, again, I know SaaStr just happened, but just things to think about if you're starting to look at your own data of performance and maybe adjustments for sending to for team members, et cetera, for the next SaaStr event. Okay, biggest things we want to cover are these kind of 3 heavy hitters in our data. So 68% of all SaaStr attendees being VP level and above. Last year, I think this was 59 or something. I don't know, it was not 68. So that definitely went up year over year. I think that's something that I know David has seen a lot in his calls post-event of, just the quality of attendees from our renewal sponsors, feeling anecdotally like it went up year over year, but now seeing in the data that it did go up year over year. So I think that's important to see. We've always been very strong on VP level and above, but it's just always good to see it continue to grow. I think that's really where we shine in our community, is having these folks that are very much at an executive level, engaged in this community and the events. 36% of all attendees being CEOs and founders. I think this was something like 32% last year. So again, a nice uptick there, that those do kind of go hand in hand, but good to see a lot of folks are, again, CEOs and founders. And then so we were going to put AI data into this, and we did. So something we've seen this year was one out of every 4 SaaStr attendees being AI first, and that's having, being in an AI first company or having AI in their actual job title. We're seeing a rise of that just across the community, but also at SaaStr Annual. So interesting to see that data here. I know a lot of you worked in AI messaging into your offerings of like what you said on the booth. Some of you picked AI as your category header. I expect this number will only go up from here. This is the first year we've distinctly tracked it. We didn't track it in previous years. So I think for it to already be at 25% sort of out the gate, again, really strong indicator that both what we're doing and what's happening and is like resonating with the community, and also happening at the same time of there is this big AI wave. A lot of our content was about, kind of trying to catch up and stay on the wave versus falling behind. And I think that's reflected here in the amount of folks that are AI native, if you will, that are coming to SaaStr and seeing it as a valued resource. That's going to be very important, obviously, going forward. David, any thoughts on that one?
Oh, I mean, every feedback call I've had, it came up right away that this was an AI heavy AI event, and a lot of it happened organically, right? A lot of it was the attendees who came, the topics they were talking about, the sponsors, what they wanted to talk about at SaaStr, and so it was a pretty organic shift, and probably expect it to continue, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I expect this only to go up from here. It's a good point on the speakers and content, though, right? We did have a lot of, the big players from AI, OpenAI, Perplexity, Anthropic, like literally all of them, Cursor, Flash Windsurf, Canva, Clio. I'm like, I don't know if we missed one. Like I do in the content. Pretty much had a lot of the heavy, I'm sure we missed a few actually, but had a lot of the heavy, major players in the game having a presence at SaaStr. So yes, again, I expect that will go up from here. And again, just something to be aware of how our audience and community is is adapting to the times really. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about this because I'm probably spending too much time on each data point, but there's a lot of, listen, we have so much data we process each year. Post annual, there's a lot of it, right? If you go into all the different, and that's why it does take a couple weeks to put it all together. There's a lot of interesting also like angles I'm sure we could take with this, but our goal is just to give you guys the data straight and just parse it down to something that's digestible. So in this will look a little bit different from years previous. So some shifts here that I'll call out, and again, things you may have seen yourself as a sponsor with leads. Again, we've seen that CEO and founder uptick this year. We're seeing a revenue leader uptick. So those, again, are C-suites at the sales and marketing functionalities. You'll see there was an uptick year over year in our CXOs. That's due to the summits that we do. That is counted in this. Investors actually held the same. That's interesting because I feel like I think last year folks were a little bit more gloomy about investors at SaaStr. And this year, I feel like, not to say that there's been more investors in year past. It did, we have the same rate as 2020. What year are we in? 2024? 2024 or 2025? I get mixed up sometimes because now we're talking about like London is this year, like annuals next year. But anyways, so yeah, like the CS product and ops and investors looked the same. The biggest shift was within like the CEO, CXO, and revenue leadership buckets. Basically the TLDR there is like those numbers kind of shifted within those categories, but remain at the same percentage overall. So it's just a different makeup of there's so many C-suite folks now that are at SaaStr, most of them being CEOs and founders, and the next bucket being revenue leaders. But again, thanks to the summits and folks kind of coming for the days of their summits, seeing a lot of CXOs proliferate into the general SaaStr annual audience. So that with coupled into the fact of how many team packs you guys saw, that's how we get so many CXOs that are coming to the show. So yes, majority of folks you'll meet are CEOs, founders, or CMOs, CSOs, folks like that, CFOs, CROs, like those will be the majority of folks you meet. But again, just to see that there are additional revenue leaders coming to SaaStr. The other thing I want to mention is our stages. So we have had the strongest uptick in year over year in what we call this enterprise/public IPO mix. Again, largely due in part to our summits and getting those folks to come to SaaStr as a whole. Again, a lot of folks here, you'll see 17% now are at that public/IPO stage of, 100 million up or like large AI valuations. We kind of mix those two together and then actually true public and IPO companies. Sometimes it's hard because some of these highly valued AI companies are not public, but like you would consider them at the same stage as a huge company. So we did a little bit of data there to keep it consistent, but that's our biggest uptick year over year. Again, I think a lot of you guys just saw across the board. Your numbers will probably match this more so than most because you have hard data of who you scan and who you've been meeting post-event. Again, I think we March so share it just to see like how your mix is. And also I think it's just a good data point of once you do come back around to start to think about staffing and engaging our community, maybe either year round or at the next SaaStr annual. Just a way of, we do advise folks to kind of divide up who they bring to SaaStr. So like if you do have, for instance, reps that are coming, that you have folks that can serve each of these markets. Two, there's different ways to activate if you want to go deep on maybe one of those verticals and one of those markets versus another. I think also anecdotally, I didn't pull the numbers for this, but we can. I would say anecdotally, a majority of our sponsors had a C-level executive at their actual booth. I know just from walking around the show floor, like there are times where I walk through, I was like, I see the CEO of G2 at the booth. I see the head of like Firebolt at the booth. Like I see the head of, I think, Prismatic at the booth. Like I saw so many, like Drew Houston from Dropbox went to their booth. Like I saw so many C-level execs and like so many more CMOs at the booths. Again, I think we do try and instill that as a best practice. So maybe that was, I don't think that was why though. I'm not taking credit for that. But I do think it's, again, we'll pull the data and we'll cite it as an actual data point, but I think the majority of folks do actually have a C-suite executive level present. Some of that has to tie into who do you want to meet with our super golden up sponsors. But I think you'll find now that that becomes commonplace. So like if it's something where, you know, maybe your C-suite didn't take it seriously of getting involved, you can give them this data point of most C-suites actually are directly involved. No one is above doing quote unquote booth duty anymore. I think that stigma is now definitely squashed at SaaStr. Maybe at other conferences, it's probably not worth it because there's too many practitioners in the loop. But at SaaStr, it's, you know, anecdotal seems to be worth it. We'll run the actual numbers, but it seems to be worth it. Anything to add there, David?
No, I think it's always a best practice, right? Like I've seen it for years that, you know, some of the C-suite that want to lead from the front, you know, do it as a great way to kind of show the team and, you know, get their own team fired up too, that they're there. So
Yeah.
that's always something that, you know, I've noticed and kind of appreciated. And yeah, it's always great to, you know, we always give that advice of trying to match, you know, the level of the attendee with you, with your team there. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was very cool.
Yep. Okay. Good insights there. Let's keep moving. There's a few more we want to hit. Average reach per sponsor level. We won't spend too much time on this because you can read the data. This is more so to benchmark yourself of where you come in at versus the average per level. If you're above or below this, again, reach out to, or if you're right on the money, you can reach out to me and David. We can help you understand maybe why. If you were below or above it, we can help you understand maybe why. And help to re-engage the community a bit better next time. Silver was a new level we added this year to the other hanger, so you'll see that reflected in this data. I think overall, let me flip ahead to see what I have. Yeah, maybe this is actually, I feel like the next slide is actually more interesting for most folks, but again, this is just from a year-over-year standpoint, you'll see very similar numbers. Like if you look at the Super Bowl from last year, I think it's literally like 1 or 2 off. I think the ones with the leads with the activation went up, which you'll see on the next slides. But I literally think last year was like 299 and now it's 298. Like we saw very similar numbers in the gold and super gold from just straight up leads from the booth. Again, very similar averages here year over year. We're talking within like 10 numbers here. So very similar. Again, biggest boost, as I called out earlier on the first slide, it's going to be in this platinum, diamond / platinum plus area. Those have the biggest lifts year over year. That is in part how we engineer those levels now. So if you're interested in finding out why, we can go through it with you. But yeah, biggest boosts for there, actually, as they should be, just given their sort of premium engagement levels. This is something I want to call out because this is something interesting where activations have always been really important at SaaStr. But I would say this year we saw that become even more so relevant. So last year, folks with an activation, I think performed something like 1.9x better. And this year we're seeing it at 2.5. So we are seeing majority of folks with an activation perform just that much better than booths that did not have an activation. And again, we don't mean this strictly as like a food activation. Some of them are food, as you would have seen. So some of your fellow sponsors had things like ice cream, gelato, cookies, whatever you name it, food trucks, like different sort of activations, different things there. Coffee is obviously usually a big hit as an activation. So yes, some of them are food-based, but you'll see folks like Alusha, who did a game, Booking.com, do a game. Demand Base had like laser engraving. Optimizely, I believe, had AI headshots that was super popular. So not everything has to be food and beverage based. If you're like, I really, we're kind of not into having food in our booth. Just having a activation of some sort to engage with folks, to give them a reason maybe to engage with you or / come back or spend a longer time with you. Again, we're seeing it in the data here. It's becoming actually even that much more important than even years previous. And I call this out because this is actually the year where we saw a dip in the amount of folks who did an activation, which is funny because it's easier now. It used to actually be more work. Never made it more turnkey and less people did it. But I would say food for thought that again, it's just that much more relevant in the performance of those who did activations. So I expect we'll see a resurgence next year on how many people do activations. It reflected in the data. The other thing I'll call out here on the average number of lead scans is on average, our returning sponsors, so few sponsored, and this is counting folks who sponsored directly in 2023. In 2024, saw on average an increase of 124% lead volume year over year. So I think that's important for folks to understand. And again, we can get into the details with you specifically on if you're above or below this average year over year as a returning sponsor. There's a lot of factors that go into it. We have a lot of trends as to why some of those skewed higher than others. Again, we could do that more on the individual level. This is just, again, high level. Most folks performed better year over year consistently. And some of that does tie into whether or not they had an activation or not. So just things to know there. Again, these are more so benchmarks, so we can talk you through this data. Something important that we've started doing last year, we did more so this year, and we'll bring over to London for the first time this December, and also do even more of next year, is the bonus lead gen and meetings program. You've heard me talk about it probably maybe ad nauseum. We call it Who Do You Want to Meet? Lots of learnings on the app version of Who Do You Want to Meet? But this is more so for the dedicated sponsor version of Who Do You Want to Meet? And this is where we solicit and reach out to attendees to share opt-in leads with all of you guys pre, during, and then post-event to have on-site meetings. Again, there are different ways in which, if you were eligible for this, and if you're just curious, there are different ways in which people activated this on site. I know some folks, at one end of the spectrum, you have folks like a Google Cloud who literally had their field CTO come and meet with these folks, run them as innovation workshops, and had they literally maxed out at 30 meetings because that's all their field CTO could do. They're like, he's here at the times the expo is open, and that's all we could do. He's like, he could do no more. So they literally maxed out at 30 on-site additional meet, and they're longer durations. Like I think they're like 30 minutes, right, David? So like if you had shorter ones, you could, in theory, do more, but they kind of maxed theirs out for how long they had theirs. I know some folks used it as just a way to get additional traffic and do group meetings in the booth. I saw Dropbox do that with their VP of marketing. And a few other folks, Artisan did it that way with their CEO. They did it after their session and just had folks come meet Jasper after their session. Again, different flavors of how you can optimize this, which we do walk sponsors through. But I think all this to say is it's a program we started last year, kind of more casually, that we did more so formally this year. We'll continue into next year. It does, for the past 2 years now that we've run this, we have seen quite a bit of a boost. So if you see and this is for eligible Super Golden App sponsors strictly, for how we ran this program in 2025, but you'll see on average, folks had anywhere between 50 to 100 on average more leads. Now some were outliers and had like a lot more than that. But that's the average, 50 to 100 additional leads. Now, if you think of the Super Gold average, I'll go back for a second. So 50 to 100 additional leads. Let's just say without any activations, you're at 300 leads and the Super Gold. That's a good percentage of extra leads, right? Like that's anywhere from 25 to 50% boost. And yes, there is some work on the sponsor end to maximize these meetings, but most of the work is done by SaaStr. So this is an important program. You'll hear us talking about this more. If you have feedback on maybe how it didn't work or ideas to optimize, let me or David know. Again, we do work with a lot of our top tier sponsors to do sort of the blueprint for how we do Who Do You Want to Meet? But again, lots of learnings on how people executed it this year to maximize these additional, again, lead gen and meetings on site. Anything to add here, David, on Who Do You Want to Meet?
I think it's a program that has worked really well when sponsors lean into it. And I think, for the next event, it's something we definitely want to spend more time on because it could be really successful and impactful, especially if you do it right. So I think it's something that a learning for me is just to, lean into this even more. And so we'll be having more conversations about it and make sure, to ask about it if you want to get more involved, because it was only available for Super Gold and up.
Correct.
So yeah, let's talk more about it.
Yeah, let's talk more about it. I think it's something where our education of this will just even deepen. I know some of the feedback I've gotten was like, you guys have a lot of communication, weekly webinars, these kinds of meetings.
I think for some folks, it got a little lost in the communication, so we need to do a better job there. But I think that for those that really embraced it, it worked out really, really well. So
agreed.
Good learning opportunity for everyone else.
Agreed. And a good learning opportunity for us of like how we pitch this. I think we almost have to do it separately from the other communications, to David's point. But yeah, lots of learnings we've gotten to from just seeing how different sponsors activate. Who do you want to meet? Again, we collect the leads, and to some degree you can do what you want with them. But I think now we've seen people use that in different ways and activate them how they wanted to on site. We've got some good best practices now that it's been the second formal time that we've run this. For I would say the majority of our sponsors are Super Gold, Platinum, and Diamond. So for a majority of sponsors. Okay. This is 12 or 15. I think it's 12. We do this every year. We post up the top 12 sponsors in terms of lead volume and meetings from SaaStr Annual. They are in alphabetical order, so they are not in order of 1 through 12. Interesting to, I think, see the mix here. There's a couple new names on here, which I think is great. Most of them, though, are returning sponsors. That's true every year. A lot of folks who know what they're doing. They show up, they get the vibe, they kind of know how to maximize their footprint. But there are some new folks on here. So again, not to say you can't come in and also reign supreme. Lots of AI first companies here as well, right? So I think that's just fun to call out and see if you were in the top 12. Doesn't mean you weren't in like the top 20 if you're not on this list. And I will say it's pretty tight actually in the top of the sponsor list. So I'll move on from that because that's just for fun. Sponsor customer passes. Again, I think we can do a better job explaining this next time. I know every year folks are like, well, I'm literally spending money on SaaStr not to meet my current customers, but to meet new customers. And yes, as you should. But also we have this program that is included in your sponsorship that I would say not a lot of folks took advantage of. So even though we ticketed, more than 300 people, that was from a smaller pool of sponsors than it was last year. We had a few sponsors who brought a bunch of customers, do the majority of the customer passes, and then a lot of folks who maybe sent 1 or 2 on average customers, and then a bunch of you who sent no customers. Again, something where I know it's hard to sometimes rally the sales or CS team to get them to invite customers and or prospects. We did say you can invite customers or prospects, and most people just invited customers, I will say too. So interesting thing here on how folks used it. But I would say most of you didn't use this. Only a handful of you did, and those who did invited like a boatload of people. So I would say that's on us because it seems like some of you got this and really saw the value of it and like went ham on it. And then most of you were like, I don't know what to do with this. So interesting thing here. We will recalibrate how we do this maybe to make it even easier for you to invite your customers. For a few of our high-level sponsors, we invited their customers on their behalf. That seemed to work a little bit better, actually, because it takes the load off of you guys. So that may be something we do more of next year. But I think just overall, this remains an area of improvement, especially for us and ourselves, of how to get more of your customers here. Again, I know you guys are here to close new business. And yes, absolutely, 100%. But we have this program for a reason. We know that at the exec level, your execs are always wanting to know like how many current customers did we also meet on site? Like if you're traveling into the Bay Area because you don't have a headquarters there anymore, can you get them to meet you at SaaStr versus having to have your CEO approve a bunch of flights back out to the Bay Area? So just something that we will talk about more so and integrate better into next year so more people do this. Because I know from every CEO I talked to and CMO and CRO, they want to know how many customers we're talking to.
Yeah, and don't forget too,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be a customer. It could be a really, bottom of funnel opportunity. It could
right.
be, a lapsed customer that you're trying to
Yeah.
reignite. So, I think that's another really great best practice to try to, get those folks to meet you at SaaStr.
Yeah. And again, I think this becomes harder because this is one of those things that AI cannot really do for you. It requires a little personal touch to invite these. Now you could port these maybe some of these contacts into an AI tool, but I think this is something where the value of it is just kind of a human first thing of building and maintaining relationships. So yeah, something we will look to streamline so that more sponsors can take advantage of this into next year and track it a little bit better going forward. So good learnings for us there too. We talked about the summits. You guys might have seen them there, but we host these for companies that are above 100 million in revenue as events within the event. We host them in sort of 4 functional areas. There's CROs and CEOs, CMOs, CCOs, and CFOs. Each is like invite only, so that's people that we're hand inviting from within the SaaStr community to come to these summits. Again, you saw that data reflected in how many public enterprise companies are coming now to SaaStr. Again, the trend we saw here was these folks are coming more so for the day of their summit. So these are typically half-day events. CTO one was a little bit longer, but yeah, they're typically half days. So there are folks coming for morning sessions, walking the show floor, or coming for afternoon sessions, walking the show floor in the morning, and coming for the day of their summit. All of our summits have to be at these specific functional areas. So CMOs, it's all CMOs, CCOs, it's all CCOs, and so on and so forth. Really great companies represented there just as a sample set. But I think again, where we got some feedback of where we can better improve is how to get sponsors more involved with this. We did have a fair amount of partners for this year's each of these different summits. And I think we've gotten some good feedback on how we can streamline that and have even more companies involved with the summits directly. So something we're working through now actively just to open it up a bit. They were very exclusive the last 2 years, and they will remain exclusive in terms of caliber of attendee and gated access control if you went to any of these summits. But I think just good to see folks just kind of wanting to get more involved in the summits, to see how they can get their execs and get involved at that level. So definitely something we are working on there. But I think overall, just the TLDR is it's just good for SaaStr and you guys as a whole, because these folks are coming again to SaaStr. The summits were a lot more integrated this year than they were last year. And so that really actually carried over into why you see so much of a lift in terms of the level of attendees who are coming and how many like lead scans you saw that are higher level. And that's because the summits were more so integrated into the whole show and got proliferated into SaaStr. Again, that's not all of our data. If there's something in particular you're curious on, let us know. We try and keep it high level, and even that was already 40 minutes. So I'll try and just hit a few last things here on SaaStr coming into what we're doing in H2 this year and then going into next year. So we will be back for 2026 SaaStr Annual. So the same venue we were just at, we're doing again next year, even more so AI, even more content, even more everything at the next SaaStr Annual. So same time frame. I know from 2024 we were in September, and then we moved to May of 2025. We'll be in May again of 2026. A lot of attendees and sponsors seem to like that. Few, I would say fewer conflicts. There's just always conflicts in any date you pick as a event organizer. I'd say fewer conflicts in May. So yeah, we'll be back in May, almost the same dates. They're off by a day, but same setup. So Tuesday through Thursday next May. If you haven't seen the fun recap video, you can watch it there or on SaaStr YouTube. Lots of good energy. I know that doesn't show up in the data, but I would say like the vibe. I know Jason talked about it a little bit on stage, but like the vibe was like very good this year. Like it's always good, but I feel like it was even more so better this year.
I agree. I agree. A
Anecdotally.
lot of good
Yeah.
vibe. A lot of good
A
vibe.
lot of good vibe. A lot of
Yes.
folks like pumped on AI. They're like, all right, I
That,
gotta become an AI expert.
yes.
So pretty fun. Again, lots of really great AI companies and builders reflected in this. Some of you might see yourself in this, which is fun. So a few things here. I'm going to pause this because it's a little distracting, all the good vibes. But our renewal period does run through the end of the month. Let me and David know if you're thinking about 26, if you're already in the midst of planning it. It only benefits you to come in early. There's like different incentives for early renewals through June 30th. So that is just June's kind of a long month, but it's in a few weeks. Some of the very best sponsorships, as you guys know, have an N equals one, meaning there's one of one. So things like coffee, there's one of one. The Founders Lounge, there's one of one. The networking lounge, we're going to combine them next year, so there'll be one of one. Some of the food trucks you guys sponsor, the Airstream, one of one. Happy hours, there's only 3. Like those all, those went this year. Lanyards, one of one. So if you're like, hey, I saw this person crush it because they had this one-off thing, let us know. Those sponsors do have first right of refusal, but that expires also on the 30th. So again, let us know if you're already thinking about it, if you're in the planning phase of it, or if you're just generally haven't had a chance to connect with us yet and want to on feedback. We're all ears. The second thing we're announcing, actually first here today, and then we're going to go big with it, is that we are going to London. I know we've been teasing it out that we're going to go to London. I think when our AI answered this question on the website, it wasn't sure for a while when SaaStr London would be. We've also in years past called it SaaStr Europa. We're just kind of converging now that everything is SaaStr AI, and this is the London edition of the AI Summit, if you will. So we are flipping it in terms of when we do it. We did it historically in the summer, but obviously we just had the annual in the summer. So we're doing Christmas in London, which I know it's so funny. It sounds like it's more exciting for us Americans, but actually in that fun fact, 30% of our audience for SaaS Europa is North America. So there are a fair amount of Americans that go to our London event. The other 70%, it actually kind of flips. It's funny. So SaaStr Annual is 73% US based and 27% all international. It kind of flips when we go to London. It's 70% Europe and then 30% North America. So think of them as opposites. But if you serve Europe, this will be fun. We're going to copy a lot of all the good vibes and great stuff you guys saw this year from SaaStr Annual. And a lot of the programs we initiated for sponsors of SaaStr Annual will now carry over to London. I will say too, typically we've been indoor, outdoor in London. We won't do that this year because it's a little too cold in December. So we're gonna be inside where it's nice and warm and it's heated. And we're gonna be actually even closer to central London. So Tobacco Docks the last few years was pretty easy to get to because you take the tube. Central London, even easier to get to. So you can still take the tube there, but it will just take you a shorter amount of time. December 2nd and 3rd. We're excited to do, we're excited actually to bring all this great AI stuff that we just did at SaaStr Annual to London. I know London has kind of become our default city of choice lately. We did do other SaaStr Europas in Paris and Barcelona that were super fun, but we asked folks and they're like, no, just go back to London. So we're now bringing SaaStr AI to London, which I think is exciting times. So again, a lot of those good vibes, a lot of the great data you just saw from all of SaaStr Annual, you will see reflected. Again, demographics being a little bit different of where people come from country-wise, but I still expect the same level of CEOs and founders, and I expect even more AI-first companies to come to the London edition because it will be about 6 months between Annual and SaaStr London in December. We'll be in central London. It'll be the 5th one, 2,500 people. I will say the venue we're in, because it is indoors, is capped. So we are going to cap the number of folks, attendees, and sponsors. So in this one year, I do expect SaaStr Europa will sell out. Like we're typically like endless capacity. I'm like, wow, not this time. I expect it will sell out. So this is the 1 year. We do have just some capacities for moving inside, but I think overall it's going to be worth it. We're bringing all the great AI vibes over to London. We're bringing our Who Do You Want to Meet program for sponsors over to London. We're bringing our, we're going to improve. We're literally spending a lot of time the next 6 months improving our app to come to London. If you want to do both, it's obviously more lucrative for sponsors to do something as a bundle. Let me or David know if you serve that arm, so we can get you in for London and you can start planning that with us in H2. We'll also do a digital AI day in October. But we wanted to announce the London one because a few folks were asking us if we'll be doing Europa this year, which we are. We're just calling it this now. So they're one and the same. Same, it's like Robert Downey Jr. coming back to be Dr. Doom, same vibe, but slightly different. All right, I'm done nerding out. What else?
It's a good analogy. That's a good one.
Yeah, right? I was like,
yeah, it's going to be awesome. I mean, London's always a super fun event. People always ask me, hey, is the audience? It's different. And I always say the difference is they're European. We get such heavy founders, go to market. It really is the same profile. But they're Europeans, and they love SaaStr. They love coming and doing all the like meetups and conversations, and it's always pretty electric.
Networking.
It's a great vibe. I love the vibe there. London, it'll be our 3rd year there, and I think from what I hear, the new venue is going to be really cool, and really excited.
It'll be super easy for you guys to get there. You can look it up here. It's Park Plaza, Westminster Bridge. It's central London. You can literally see Big Ben from it.
Yeah, great way to finish the year and really, it'll all be about kicking off 2026, right? And it's a great opportunity to get that Q1 pipeline going. And I'm excited.
And so, we heard some stories this year. As we always do, folks closing deals on site at annual. I suspect folks will close a few Q4 deals, end of year deals at SaaStr London. So for many of you, you might have a European team that you'll send, or maybe they'll send you. You can pack your bags with us. Good time of year to go to London. As an American, there's a bunch of like Christmas markets, which I'm very excited for. So I'm like, actually, maybe we'll see slightly more Americans than 30% this year because we all glamorize Christmas in London and we just pretend it's not cold. With that, thanks for sticking around. I know this was a slightly longer post-exec debrief. We will write this up. My AI is literally recording it right now and already transcribing it. So we'll write this up. We'll get this out to all of you guys. If you want to deep dive into anything, as always, let us know. In the meantime, we are doing a lot of other things, which we didn't even get to on this webinar, but our weekly workshops are coming back in a couple of weeks. We are ramping up, as David said, the podcast, SaaStr.com, doing in H2, our big plans are a digital AI day plus SaaStr AI in London, and then obviously ramping up for SaaStr annual again next year. There's a lot going on at SaaStr. So if you want to stay in the loop, I know we've already been chatting with a few of you of getting involved in all those things just to engage our community ongoing. That works really well for us. Also gives us a lot of flexibility of what we can do with you. And I think lots of, we'll maybe do a SaaStr audience deep dive in between now and the next thing we do. It's just because the rate of change is so fast. I think it's important to see what's trending in our community, et cetera. Obviously, this one's very SaaStr annual heavy, but we'll do that again soon. So you guys just know what's happening out there.
Awesome. David at SaaStrInc.com, Amelia at SaaStrInc.com.
That's
feel
us.
free to reach out. We'll go deeper into anything and
we'll go deep.
Yeah, see y'all soon.
All right, guys. Miss you already. See you at the next SaaStr thing. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.